All right, let's talk Vikings. History paints a pretty simple picture, right? Brutal raiders, end of story. But what if that's not even close to the whole truth? Today, we're going to tear apart that legend. We're separating the hard facts from the Hollywood fiction, and trust me, what we find is going to be pretty surprising.
So, when you picture a Viking, what comes to mind? I'm guessing it's something like horned helmets, giant axes, a lot of yelling, yeah? Well, first off, those horned helmets? Totally fake, a complete myth. But that gets to the real question we're tackling here. Were they just these fearsome raiders we see in the movies? Or were they actually master innovators who literally helped build the world we live in today? Let's dig in and find out.
Okay, so how does a reputation like that even get started? It didn't just build up over time. Nope, it exploded onto the scene with one single, absolutely shocking event. An attack so brutal, it sent a literal shockwave from the north all the way across Europe. It was quite the introduction.
And the Viking Age wasn't just some vague, fuzzy period in history. Not at all. Historians have actually pinpointed its start and end with incredible accuracy. It all kicks off in 793 AD with that raid we just mentioned, the attack on Lindisfarne, and it all comes to a dramatic close in 1066 at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. So everything we're about to get into, it all happens right between those two massive events.
So let's talk about that first event. Picture this. It's a calm day at a peaceful, wealthy monastery called Lindisfarne, right on the English coast. It's a center for learning, for prayer, a totally soft target. And then, out of nowhere, these sleek ships with dragon heads carved on the front just appear on the horizon. The attack that came next was so unbelievably savage, so completely unexpected, that it terrified the entire Christian world. And that is the moment the terrifying image of the Viking was born, an image that, let's be honest, has stuck around ever since.
Okay, so that one event basically created the legend. But who were the people behind the raids? Were they really just some disorganized mob of killers running around? Well, not even close. To really get who they were, we have to look past the axes and the battlefields and step inside their society. Because what you find is something surprisingly complex and very, very ordered.
And when you look, you see a really clear and strict social structure. It was basically a three-tiered system. At the very top, you've got the jarls. These are your nobles, your wealthy landowners, the ruling class. Then you've got the carls, who are the huge majority of the population. These are the free people, your farmers, your craftsmen, merchants, and yeah, your warriors. They were the backbone of everything. And then, at the very bottom, you had the thralls. These were enslaved people, often captured during those raids that made the Vikings so infamous.
Okay, now this might be the biggest mythbuster we have. Think about it. At this time, most of Europe is deep in feudalism, right? Kings and lords have all the power, but the Vikings, they had something called the Thing Assembly. And this was, well, it was basically an early form of democracy. It was a gathering where all free men could show up, make laws, settle arguments, and make huge decisions for the whole community. I mean, come on, that's not what lawless barbarians do. That's an organized and, frankly, a pretty civil society. All right, so if they weren't just a disorganized mob, how in the world did they become such an effective, such a feared military force? Well, the answer is a one-two punch of brilliant strategy and some truly game-changing technology. Yeah, their success in battle was absolutely not random. It was a system, a devastatingly effective three-part plan. First up, surprise attacks. They were masters at hitting you at dawn or whenever you least expected it. Second, insane mobility. They used their ships to hit you fast and then just vanish before you could even think about fighting back. And third, and this is key, psychological warfare. They used their scary reputation to make their enemies panic, sometimes winning the fight before a single sword was swung.
And listen, none of that, the speed, the surprise, none of it would have worked without their ultimate weapon, the longship. This thing was an absolute marvel of engineering. For one, it had a shallow bottom so they could sail right up rivers that attack cities way, way inland. It was also super fast and agile, which made their hit-and-run style so deadly. And get this, it was so lightweight they could literally pick it up and carry it over land if they needed to get around an obstacle. This one piece of tech, it basically gave them a key to all of Europe.
But here's the thing, raiding was only one part of the story. If we only focus on that, we miss the bigger picture. To really understand the Vikings, you have to see what else they were doing. And they were also incredible explorers, savvy merchants, and colonists who are operating on a truly global scale.
You can really think of it like two sides of the same coin. On one side, yep, you've got the raider, hitting monasteries and towns for treasure and slaves. But on the other side, you have the trader. These guys were setting up huge trade networks that went all the way from their homes in the north, down to Byzantium, even into the Middle East. So they weren't just taking stuff, they were actually connecting different cultures through commerce.
And the impact of all that trading, it was absolutely massive. Just think about it for a second. The Roman Empire had collapsed, leaving this huge economic hole in Europe. Well, it was the Viking trade networks that helped stitch things back together, reconnecting everyone and rebuilding the economy. So they weren't just disruptors, they were creators. They were actually laying the groundwork for the entire medieval world.
Of course, all great eras have to come to an end, and the Viking Age was no different. But here's the interesting part. Even after the fighting stopped and the last longships went home, their influence on the world, well, that was really just getting started.
So let's go to the year 1066. We're in England at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. A massive invading Viking army from Norway is finally defeated in a really brutal battle. For most historians, this is it. This is the big bookend, the last great Viking invasion and the symbolic end of their incredible age of conquest.
But wow, what a legacy they left behind. I mean, politically, they totally redrew the map of Europe, helping create new kingdoms like England and even Russia. Economically, we just talked about how their trade routes basically built the Middle Ages. And culturally, their impact is still with us literally in the words we use every day. English words like sky, leg, window, those are all Viking words. They come from Old Norse. From our DNA to our maps, they permanently changed every place they touched. So that brings us right back to where we started. They were so much more than just raiders, right? Which leaves us with one final question to chew on. When you look around at our world today, at our language, our economies, even our ideas about law, what part of that incredibly complex, innovative, and disruptive Viking legacy do you think we can still see most clearly?